Crafting a board and batten door, part 1. Well, good day, folks. I'm here at the old church now. Got a bit of snow clearing to do before I can get inside the old board and batten door that you see in front of me here. I can't open that right now, but I will shortly after I clean off the landing there and the steps with some of the snow. Now you might be asking, what does a board and batten door actually look like? This is a board and batten door here at the old church. It's actually the door that leads into the vestry, which, as I said earlier, is our current woods room. Let's have a look at this door. It's usually made from tongue and groove Metz lumber, which is what this one is made from. It's this one is a bit beaten and old, but still a great door. And I'm just going to open the door here now and show you what it looks like on the other side. Now, it's a board and batten because these are the boards and the battens are these here. Many years ago, these battens were attached to these doors with square nails, and then they were clinched over. This door was actually made from 2-inch penny nails, and the same process was used though. The nails were clinched over. This is a board and batten door, which I'm going to make this weekend, folks. So you're going to join me on that process of how to make a board and batten door. Now that the rustic look is quite popular and common now in a lot of homes and certainly in a lot of cabins, the battens are often now put on the good side, or the side facing out, or the side facing into a room. It is, as I said, becoming very popular now. My wife and I are trying to decide what we are going to do. So I'm going to get started shortly at the door. I'll be cutting the pine boards that I have to length, and then we'll decide together what we are going to do. Whether we are going to keep the good side smooth, or if we are going to put the battens on the good side facing into the church. After teaching my classes on Friday, folks, I stopped off at a local hardware store to have a look at some tongue and groove pine boards. I was able to pick through the boards, being careful to pick out the boards that Betty and I wanted for our door, boards that were very knotty with a lot of character. After purchase, the boards were shrink wrapped and placed in my truck for the trip home. Here are the boards that I'm going to be using to make the board and batten door today, and these boards are pine tongue and groove. They are around 5 inches wide, and so I've got plenty here, folks, to do a door. So I'll be using these boards. I'll be unwrapping them now. I have the boards all unwrapped now from the plastic wrap. Going to be picking through these now and picking out some real nice ones with lots of knots and lots of character to make a board and batten door for here at the old church. As you can see, folks, I purchased a lot more boards than I need, and the reason for that is I wanted a variety of boards that I can choose from. We are going with the knotty look, and some of these boards are not as knotty as the others, so we want to pick through them and pick out the ones that are most knotty, and those will become the boards for our door. The ones that are less knotty, we'll put those aside, and they will be used for something else for sure. I have laid out here on this table, ladies and gentlemen, folks, a variety of tools that I think I'm going to need in order to craft my board and batten door. And I'll just pan around here now and tell you what I have. I have a couple of squares, a hammer, and a Robinson screwdriver there. I have a variety of clamps, some bar clamps here to keep the door together. I have some other clamps right there. I have some silver colored screws. I went out and purchased 2 boxes, 100 in a box, of number 10 1¼ inch Robinson's bit type screws, and we're going to be using those to keep the battens and the door together. Betty and I were going with the black look for our hardware. Here's our hardware over here. So we are also going to spray paint all of our screws. So here's our screws here. I got some already spray painted. with the black spray paint here. I'll spray paint these here in a few seconds. Some other tools that you're going to need. You're going to need a couple of drills. You're going to need a drill with a bit into it for pre-drilling, and that's always important. I always pre-drill whenever I can. You're going to need another drill with a Robinson's bit into it. You're probably going to need some countersinking bits. I have a variety here that I'm going to use. We're going to try and countersink all of these screws. You probably will need a utility knife. You're going to need a pencil. I have several there, and a measuring tape. Okay, you're going to need some glue. You're going to need some hardware. We have some, like I said, classic black hinges that we're going to use. Okay, the hinges came with these little black screws, folks. I bought some number 8s. Okay, also 1 1/4. Okay, here they are. Okay, I'm going to substitute the ones that came with the hardware for the longer number 8s, and I'll spray paint those, and we'll use those. A little black handle that we're going to use. Okay, so in addition to the tools laid on this table right here, you're also going to need a miter saw, absolutely, in order to saw off those boards, and a couple of boards you may have to rip. So you're going to need a table saw. So I think I got all of my tools ready to begin my board and batten door. I have the boards for our door rough fitted here on the floor of the old church and kept together with a couple of bar clamps. And when I did my measuring, lo and behold, it came out to just 31 inches, and I need 32. So now, how am I going to compensate for that 1 inch? Well, here's what I'm going to do, folks. I'm going to add in 1 extra board. I'm going to move my tape about halfway over the first board on that side. I'm going to fit in 1 more board in order to get it to the 32. And I'm going to have to rip the board on this end, on the right hand side of the door, and I'll have to rip the board on the left hand side of the door so that it's pretty even. Right? So that's how I'll have to fit this door together. I have the door rough fitted again now with an extra board laid in and clamped in with the bar clamps. And this time when I do my measuring, it measures 36 inches. So what I'm going to have to do now, folks, is I'm going to have to rip a couple of inches of each of the boards on each end, a couple of inches on the right hand board, and a couple of inches on the board on the left hand side. And that'll bring me down to the 32, and it will look nice and even on both sides. So I have the pine tongue and groove boards all cut to length here now. The door opening is 80 inches, so I've cut the boards to 79 3/4 to allow for an 1/8 of an inch on the bottom and an 1/8 of an inch on the top. Now I'm getting ready to figure out the width of this door. Now I have it rough in, and it comes out to 36 inches. So I found the center here, the center being 18, and now I've divided up the distance that I need. The width is going to be 31 3/4 instead of 32. And again, for the same reason, I want to have an 1/8 of an inch on either side of the opening. So if you look at my math here on the side, 31 3/4, half of that is 15 and a half, and then half of the 3/4 is 3/8. So it works out to 15 7/8. So from the center line of my door, right here, I'm measuring out the 15 3/4. Okay, so there's my mark. There's my mark on this side of the door, the left-hand side of the door, and I had the tape put right on the mark. And if you go the full length, and you come here to the end, 31 3/4. So those two outside boards now, I'm going to be taking them over to the table saw, and I'll be ripping those. I'm getting ready here now to put one of the tongue and groove boards through the table saw to get it ripped for the side of the door. in this step of putting together a board and batten door, I'm getting ready to clamp the tongue and groove boards together, and I have 4 pipe clamps here. I have the 2 on each end there now already clamped, and I've got the 2 here in the middle that I'm going to clamp as well. Now, I have them off center here because I want to put a board right across the center here, and I didn't want my clamps in the way. You might also notice that I have little blocks put next to the edge of my boards here. These little blocks will take the pressure when the boards come together, and I won't damage any of my boards for the door. That's very important. You don't want to damage the edges of your doors, so these little blocks work out quite well. Okay, so just give it a good tight. Don't over tight it because then the boards will they'll cup up. Okay, so there's 3. There's my 4th one. Getting ready to put this one in here now. I just want to hand tight it really, or just maybe a half turn past hand tight. Like I said, you don't want to over tight it because it will cup up in the center, and you want a nice flat finish here. Okay. All right. All boards are together. I just want to do one final measurement now. Remember I said that the door opening for our door is 32 inches. I cut my door width to 31 3/4. That gives me 1/2 inch on either side of the door. 31 3/4 right here at the base. And I moved my pipe clamp up a bit so that I can put my batten along the bottom. Up here at the top, I also did the same thing. I moved my pipe clamp down a bit, giving me enough space to put my batten on. And I'm just going to measure across here now. 31 3/4 it is. So this is fairly good. Here in the center, I just want to do a measure here. 31 3/4 also. So it looks to be pretty square. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut my battens, and I'm going to get my glue and my black screws, my 1 1/4 inch screws, and I'm going to begin the task now of putting the battens in this board and batten door. For my battens, I'm going to be using the same tongue and groove boards, the 5-inch boards. I'm just going to rip the tongue and the groove off of these boards, folks, and I'm just going to cut them. The top one and the bottom one will need to be 31 3/4 inches. The center batten will need to be shorter than the bottom batten and the top batten. More on the size of the center batten later. When cutting boards to any length, ladies and gentlemen, folks, for any reason really, and certainly for a board and batten door, I find a useful technique is to stack my boards on my miter saw, like I have here, making sure that they are all flush on one end, and then the end nearest the saw, I find it useful to make sure that they all line up, and then to pull the saw down and just see if it makes a good seam there. And if it does, you can cut all your boards and they'll all be exactly the same length that you need. I have my 3 battens, cut the length here now, ready to take them over to the table saw, and I'm going to be ripping off the tongue and the groove on these 3 boards. I have my top and my bottom battens cut the length to 31 3/4 inches long. I got it roughly clamped here now, just to get a gauge on where it needs to go, and I'm getting ready to glue it and put it into place. But before I do that, I also want to know where my screws are going to go. And just so that I know that my screws are not going to be in the way of my hardware, I'm just lining up my hinge here now and trying to get an idea of where to put my 2 screws here on the end. I didn't want them to be put underneath the hinge, and then when I go to put my screws in for my hinge, the screws that keep the batten on are kind of in the way. So I got a good idea there now. I'm just looking at this, that if I put a screw here on the outside and one up here, they won't be in the way. I'm gonna remove my clamps in a second, put some glue down, and I'm gonna reclamp it, and then I'm gonna use my my bit here for putting in the holes for the screws so I can countersink them. Then I'm going to pre-drill and put the screws in. And I have the screws right here, already spray painted black. and they'll go in, and hopefully it'll look pretty good. Okay, I got a couple of screws put in there now. I made sure that the batten and the door were lined up nice and square. I've got 2 screws put in on that end, and I'm going to put in the last one right here now on this end, making sure that it's all nice and square. And then I'll go ahead and do some pre-drilling toward the center here. I'll make sure I got it all lined up, and I'll take my time measuring off where I need to put my screws so I have a nice pattern when it's all done. I nearly have the top batten put on this door now, folks. I'm going to put on the last screw here now. I have it pre-drilled because it's close to the edge. I didn't want it to split. So here we go with the last screw. Okay, all finished up. I wrote down my measurements where my screws are. I'm going to move now to the bottom part of the door and do exactly the same thing, keeping the same measurements so that all of my screws will line up and I'll have a nice neat pattern in my door when it's all done. Okay, I have the bottom batten on now. The top I had on before. I used the same measurements on the bottom for my screws, and I countersunk them, the same measurements that I use on the top. I'm going to get ready now shortly and do the 2 rails, the ones that go up both sides. And then I'll put on my middle batten, and after that, we'll do the X braces in the center. I have both rails cut now for the board and batten door, one for the right side and one for the left. I had them glued as well. I'm going to turn them over now and put them into place on the sides of the door. Once I get them into place now, I must also put back my clamps. Okay, one on that side. And this one as well. I'm using a rubber mallet to do this kind of work. Pine, as you know, is a soft wood, and it is quite easy to damage. So this rubber maul that I'm using here, which I normally use for my hardwood flooring, is good for this. I'm just going to line it up here now, and then I'm going to reattach my clamps, my pipe clamps. Okay, that was good. Okay, after I attach the pipe clamps, I'm going to be doing the drilling again, countersinking the screws, of course, and putting on these 2 rails. All right, thought I'd just check in here now, just show you how I'm coming along here in terms of progress. The top batten, the center batten, and the bottom batten are in place and screwed in, and they are not coming off, folks. The 2 side rails are in place as well. I have them attached at the top and the bottom and in the middle. I have a few more screws to go in both of those, and then the only thing left with this door are the X braces. Taking into account the width of the left rail and the right rail, the length of the center batten will need to be 27 1/4 inches long. All right, the door is coming together there now, folks. I've got the 2 rails and the 3 battens all screwed in and glued, so they're all in place. The only thing left now is the X braces in the top portion and the X brace in the bottom portion, and then the door will be finished. All right, we think we're almost done here, folks. I got 2 more screws. I'm going to screw them in there now. I was going to do the X's, but Betty seems to think that the way it is looks awesome. So I think we're going to leave it as is. And what do you think? If you think it needs the other 2 braces, let us know in a couple of comments. But for now, I think we're done. We're going to let this door sit all night, let it rest, let the glue cure, and maybe tomorrow we'll put the hardware on and we'll put it up in the door box. But for now, I think we're done.
And this concludes part 1 of crafting a board and batten door here at the old church. Betty and I look forward to you joining us for part 2, where we had hardware and we actually hang the new door. The old church, folks, is starting to look quite livable, and Betty and I are very excited to have you along with us on our restoration journey. Keep checking your email inbox, folks, for notifications from us as we continue to upload more videos. And of course, to receive notifications, you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that is a very easy process. It's also absolutely free, folks. Just click on the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of this and all our videos.